guys, and welcome back to the Social Saint podcast. I'm so excited to be back today. I'm really excited for the conversation that we're going to have. I just also wanted to say thank you guys so much for watching the last episode. So much feedback, such great feedback from everyone on the testimony. It's amazing when you get to share what it's done in other people's lives. So thank you guys so much for all the feedback. I'm definitely going to keep doing more. So today's episode, I have some fantastic guests with me. Today I am joined by my friend Shalom.
Hi everyone. How's it going?
And my friend Jemima.
Hey.
So Shalom and Jemima. How did we meet? We met at book club. Was it a book club?
I met you through church.
Oh, you came to church, yeah.
I think it was Maddie. She had like a game.
Yeah, there was a game.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Me, yeah.
I played articulate.
Oh my gosh, was that
very
before?
Badly.
That was ages ago. That was actually ages ago. Okay, and then obviously Jemima is not obviously, but Jemima is married to Shalom. But I actually I met you then. But we go to a book club that was where I kind of really saw you guys in action. Like, saw you guys doing your thing. That's how I kind of got to know you guys a little bit better. But we've known each other for a few years now, and it's obviously been amazing just to see everything. It's just so funny. You guys' engagement photos are the first photos in my phone. Like, really? That's like, I got my phone, well, my old phone, when you guys got engaged, and before that I don't have any of my pictures saved. Oh, wow. And for some reason I won't delete them because I'm like, I love these photos. So literally every time my phone accidentally scrolls to the top, it's literally like I see the saxophone, and I'm just like, I rewatch the video. It's like a little creep.
I'll take that.
And I didn't even really know you guys that well back then, so it's even more creepy. But so that's how I kind of know them. But today we've got a really interesting topic. So just to give a little bit of context, how I came to the conclusion to do this episode. So I think most of you will probably have seen two or three episodes ago, I did a podcast with my cousin Devonte, and the podcast was basically on just like the idea of monogamy and polygamy and relationships and marriage and open relationships, and it was a really interesting conversation. But I got so much feedback and so many conversations on the idea of what relationships are supposed to be. And it's funny because I've never spoken about relationships on this podcast until then, but out of it's just come a lot of conversation. So I thought I'd kind of do like a follow-on. But obviously both me and Devonte are single, we're not married, but today's episode is we're going to be talking about something slightly different. But I thought instead I was going to have it on a married couple, so I decided to have it on one of my favorite married couples who are also Bible scholars who I've learned so much from, I'm just really excited for the conversation. So kind of just to give a little bit of context, like I said, after the last podcast I had a lot of conversations with my friends just about like, okay, what is marriage supposed to be in 2021? And it's interesting because sometimes you read stuff in the Bible, and I'm reading stuff in the Bible, I'm like, excuse me sir, that ain't gonna work. That ain't gonna work. And then I'm like, okay, cool, let me understand this, but then in the perspective of that time, but then also how does this work in 2021? You know, how do we cultivate these kind of godly, Christ-centered relationships and marriages in 2021 when some of the stuff just feels a little bit outdated? Like, some of it just feels a little bit outdated, but is it outdated? And that's kind of the conversation that I wanted to have today. I just wanted to, first of all, just before we go into and think, how long have you guys been married? Like, how did you meet? All of this stuff. Everyone loves a good love story, a little romance story.
Looking at me for so we've been married a year and what, nine months? Like something like that.
Nearly
Anyway.
10 months.
Yeah.
A year, nearly 10 months.
Yeah, so we got married in August 2019. And how did we meet? Literally just kind of.
It was church.
Yeah, walked into church one day and just saw her.
Oh really?
Yeah. Just saw her and just like, obviously.
Well, you didn't speak to me. So.
Yeah, I didn't speak to you because I felt like I shouldn't at the time. I mean, we later discovered it was the right decision.
Yeah.
But yeah, I saw her and I was like, I actually didn't say anything.
You didn't.
But I just felt like, as soon as I saw her, like, this is going to be your wife. And I was like,
did you know straight away?
Yeah, I did feel that, I'll be honest. Obviously, I never met her, didn't know anything about her. And I wasn't looking at the time, is what I tell people.
Yeah.
It's very easy to be kind of distracted when you're looking for something.
Yeah.
You know, it happens a lot, especially in Christianity. You're looking for something,
yeah.
So everything's a sign. Every woman carrying the Bible is your wife. Do you know what I mean? But so I wasn't looking at the time, and I felt it, and I was like, okay, cool. I seriously prayed about it. Not even so much that this is her, gave me a sign. Mm-hmm. It was even more, if this isn't her, please let me know. I don't want to do the wrong thing. Do you know what I mean? Again, best to start that early because it's very difficult to pray when feelings are involved. I think people underestimate the power of feelings. But yeah, no, it's very easy.
So take you to a very interesting place if you're not careful, boy.
But yeah, no, I prayed for a bit, and then obviously, you move into a girl, there's some scheming involved. So had to do some scheming. Got some one-to-one time with her. Finally,
after how long?
It just doesn't matter. Okay. It was quite a while, a couple of months.
Nearly a year.
Nearly a year, but got some one-to-one time with her, and we had a good conversation. She got to know me a bit better. Before that, she thought I was just this noisy, just annoying person, really. And I get that.
Argumentative, wow.
I do have that. But yeah, we got someone one time, and things just went from there. And it's never smooth dating. Obviously.
Yeah.
You learn a lot, but yeah, we went on from there, and about a year and 9 months in, I proposed, and obviously she said yes
because you're here today.
Exactly. But yeah, that's pretty much, that's like the summary. So much of the story, but yeah, that's pretty much the summary of it all.
So was it like the same for you? Like, did you know straight away?
No, not at all.
Yours was more of a figuring it out.
I was kind of seeing someone at the time when I first met him.
Oh, okay.
And I didn't actually think anything of him. Like, I just knew his name. That was about it. What?
No, that's fine.
Yeah. So, and then things kind of ended. I say seeing. I was seeing someone. Yeah, I was seeing someone. Kind of ended, fizzled out, and after that, I was just like, didn't really want to see anyone else. I was very okay being single because we were like 21 at the time, quite young. So yeah, but and then we were both youth leaders at our church, and so we started talking a bit more. And when I said argumentative, like, it's just silly arguments about basketball, music, who's better, Adele or Beyonce, things like that. He was always starting these. So I saw him as just like some noisy, loud guy, but troublemaker, always liking to, spark people up. But yeah, we spent more time together. I still saw him as a friend though. I didn't. That's it. Until I could tell where things were going, that he was kind of feeling me. I was like, I don't know about that. So I was going to send him a message and just be like, yeah, I can tell you're feeling me and I'm not on it. I'm very direct and straight. I don't like to lead people the wrong way. I don't want to send mixed messages. I'm quite straight. But my friends and my siblings were like, just go and see what he's saying.
Oh, so he actually asked you on a date at this point?
Yeah, he asked me on a date, and we went out, and yeah, he was telling me he was praying and like had prayed for a year. I was like, wow, that's quite serious. So I couldn't be like, oh no. So I went back, prayed, and I just felt so at peace.
Really?
Yeah, so at peace. But it was 0 to 100 because I definitely didn't have feelings before. But after I could see his intentionality, I think from then.
Yeah. Okay, that's really interesting. So you, like, basically you were sure, you weren't sure, and then you kind of met up, went on a date, was a bit more like, okay, cool, let me pray about it, and then stuff like that. That's really interesting because I feel like sometimes, like you said, people just go for feelings. Like, a lot of people just think, okay, I'm feeling this person, we'll make it work. But you guys started off with prayer, which is actually how it's supposed to be, especially for Christians at least. Like, it's supposed to be like a prayer thing. So that's really, really interesting. But like, so a year and 9 months, did you say, before you proposed?
Yeah.
A lot of people would say that's quick. Did you guys think that was quick, or did you feel like that was long?
I don't know. I didn't think it was quick because I told Shalom straight, if we're dating, like, this is leading to marriage.
Yeah.
So I knew it was coming, and Shalom had always told me he wants to get married like young, like build together and stuff like that. So I did think, like, yeah, it would happen in the first few years of us being together. I didn't think it would happen for 2 years, but yeah, I didn't. It wasn't too much of a shock. I would say.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, like you said, we wanted to. Well, I wanted to kind of get married. And then also, I feel like if you talk about it enough, it's I'm always so surprised when people just kind of
float.
Yeah, just float. And then some people even just kind of like propose without asking. It's not a discussion,
I know, because I always think for someone to say no to a proposal, they must have really not known that was coming.
100%.
But I think that's a bit bizarre because it's like, how do you get to that
some
stage?
People have a moment of clarity, like, wow, now that I'm in this situation, can I actually?
But also, people don't talk about it.
Some people.
People don't talk about it, like, and as the guy from his perspective, like, it seems like a sure thing. But you never know. You need to ask your partner what they're going through, how they feel, about it. So we spoke about it quite a bit before, I knew I was able to do that, and I knew the answer was going to be yes. So definitely safe and sorry.
When you were going into marriage, do you feel like you understood the weight of what it was? Was you quite like, not that it's a weight in that sense, like it's a burden, but like it's a big commitment. Do you feel like, obviously you've been married now a year and 10 months, but like, do you feel like, and you've now been married the same amount of time you was dating now, so do you feel like you understood the weight of what the commitment you was getting into? Because a lot of people, I've heard this a few times, is that people are like, oh, this person was my boyfriend, this person was my girlfriend for however long, and then we got married and it all went pear-shaped. And I always think that's very bizarre. What is it about marriage that flips it, if that makes sense? Like, okay, people have been together for 10 years, they get married and that's when it goes left. What is it about marriage that makes it such a hard, not a hard thing to do, but like, did you feel like you understood what you were getting yourselves into?
I think that I mean, you kind of have an idea, but I think the bigger thing with marriage is understanding like certain principles beforehand. You know, you can never actually be fully prepared, but I feel like if you understand certain principles, you'll be able to kind of navigate stuff. So, for example, sacrifice is one. You know, you get married to somebody, you're not just gonna just do your own thing anymore. You know, you have a partner now. You know, you have to have discussions. You can't just go out on your own. If you mentally prepare for that, then when the time comes and you have to start sacrificing, then you know, it's not so much of a shock for you. It's not like a huge deal, you know. But again, it's about understanding certain things. Obviously, we didn't live together prior to getting married. So that was another thing I had to prepare for. Like, you know, if this person I'm moving in with, you know, doesn't squeeze the toothpaste properly, how am I going to react? Yeah, for real, like, how am I going to react? You know, I did. Because it's the little things, you know, obviously, she likes to do her hair and her makeup, like, you know.
So wait, hold on. How does one squeeze the toothpaste? I didn't know there was one way to squeeze the toothpaste.
I'll be honest, I don't feel like I've told you this, but you know, you squeeze from like the middle. You
No,
shouldn't squeeze from the middle.
Bottom. I squeeze from the
No,
bottom
because
up.
the toothpaste is always like twisty. Like you squeeze from the bottom, so it's a smooth transition.
Yeah, that's what I do.
You
From the
sure?
bottom. Yeah, that's what I do. Maybe you're doing it. You're
know.
meant to squeeze from the bottom,
Bottom,
Yeah.
so it
and up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Rather than from the top.
From the top or the
balls at
middle.
the bottom.
Exactly.
Whew. I don't think I know the way of marriage. I would have been out here pressing the middle, pressing the top, pressing the
This
side.
it sounds minor. It probably is minor.
Yeah,
But
no, but you're correct. It is those kind of small things that make a big difference. Sometimes you just like, because if you think about it, if they I don't know, do something small, like the way that they sleep on their pillow is annoying, and then you wake up and then you see a sock on the floor and that's annoying. By the time you've got to the toothpaste, it's the last straw,
exactly.
and we're only at 8 a.m.
Exactly.
and I've already had my last. So it's all the little things that
Literally.
it can make a difference.
Literally.
That's really interesting. So for you guys, would you guys say, because obviously, and the reason why I particularly really wanted people on it who weren't like necessarily, obviously you guys have been, I think anyone that stays married after a year is amazing, but and the reason why I didn't like have my parents on who've been married like 30 odd years is because it's really important to me in this particular episode is to really speak to young people who are in new marriages about the reality of what it is. And I think, you know, one of the things I was kind of talking about with my friend out of the some of the conversations that came out after the podcast was, what is the role of a woman and the role of a man in a relationship, in marriage in particular. And I think obviously to answer that, we're probably going to have to go into like what is marriage, but I don't want to dwell here for too long. So one of you, quick fire, give me your definition of what you think marriage is, and then from there we'll go.
Two people coming together, man and woman, living life together.
Living life together. I like that. Simple, to the point.
Yeah.
What about you?
Partnership is the only thing I can think of.
Yeah.
Partnership, just involving each other throughout every single thing, every decision, you know, everything you do.
Yeah.
That's the simplest way to put it.
And I think it's like, and I think obviously we can go to the Bible, we can look at Genesis 3. I think it's Genesis 3? Oh, no, wait, Genesis 2? For the definition of marriage, well, what God kind of shows us in the first marriage, which was Adam and Eve. But I think what you said there, Jemima, was really like, you know, key. It's like two people coming together with that kind of commitment to stay together. But obviously, like I said, I don't want to dwell there too long. What do you guys, and I think this is really interesting, what do you guys feel like is the role of a man and the role of a woman in a marriage? Biblically, and then reality for you guys, if that makes sense.
Oh, it's a tough one.
You go first.
Biblically, a man, I would say, head of the house.
Yeah.
So financially, decision-wise,
Yeah.
provider, protector.
Mm-hmm.
For a woman, I would say supporter.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what else biblically I'd say. That's the main thing.
I guess I agree. I think when people hear like head of the home, they think of like, you know, this kind of CEO tyrant kind of thing. But it's literally not that. You know, I've never even once used that word or that phrase to you. To like, you know, it's not something that comes up.
Oh no, I can't, like, for me the idea of someone being like, I'm the head of the home, I feel like I'd start fighting.
I'll laugh if Shalom.
Okay. Anyway.
Exactly. It's weird that I just come back
weird.
and just I'm the head of the home. Let me, like, no, you don't do that. I think there's so much that comes with it. But I think it's really, really tricky because I think there's a traditional view, and I feel like nowadays if you have a traditional view, it seems as though like kind of stuck in the past and things like that, which I can understand. Things do change. I still feel like that's kind of my role and what I need to do. But that's not to say, you know, I'm the provider, quote unquote, meaning like Jemima can't do her own thing. She's very comfortable to do her own thing. She can. But I feel like I do have to take care, especially because I know this might be a bit off, but when it's time to like have kids, if you do have kids, you do have to take time off work, you know, and then literally I am the one that has to make sure that she's okay. You know, she doesn't have to do that for me because I can't do that. But I think it goes a long way with a lot of stuff. So I definitely do see it like that. So again, having these titles doesn't mean that your wife is, you know, like a part B or, you know, lesser or whatever. It just means that this is what you're doing.
Yeah.
You know, she can also do the same as I provide. She buys me stuff as well. You know what I mean? She doesn't just expect and expect.
PS5. PS5.
Yeah, no, I was happy about that. But yeah.
That's really interesting. But like, so for you guys, you would say that's the like reality of your, for the most part.
Ish, yeah. Well, because when you were saying biblically, I'm like, okay, it's obviously cook isn't in there. Like a woman's meant to be a cook.
Yeah, it's not in.
But that's the traditional
what
view.
people think. Yeah.
I mean, I do cook, but
I think the wording that it uses, and I'll have to double check this in a second. But I think the wording that it uses, it's like oh my gosh, what is the word? When it says something about like of the home, like I'm gonna search it, but I think it's like that you basically keep the home, if that makes sense. And I think that's kind of like the idea is that like this guy, the husband, goes out, makes money, provides. But there's also like a flip side of this, because that seems all very physical, but there's also like a spiritual side, which is like the spiritual protection. And you know, the Bible talks about the husband being the crown or the head, and also him being accountable, if that makes sense. And I think sometimes, you know, there's this one, and I'm gonna read it because it triggers me every time I read it. But the more that I remember the first time, I think it was last year, we were doing, so right now in our church, we're doing this morning devotional where we're reading through the Bible. And I remember when we got to this verse, I was a bit like, it sparked a lot of conversation, but it basically says, husbands likewise dwell with them with understanding, giving honor to the wife as the weaker vessel and as being heirs together of the grace of life, that your prayers may not be hindered. And, obviously, the part that's triggering is the wife as the weaker vessel. When I said that, I said, sorry, who is weaker? Not me. I don't know if you know about a 2021 woman who's out here getting it, but God, I don't think that's correct. But it's interesting because that throws everything into the mix in that scripture, because it first of all talks about the husband being understanding, and then honor. Then it talks about this weakness, which you know, is it referring to physical weakness, spiritual weakness, and then it throws in grace of life. What, I've never heard that in the Bible before, that term. And then it goes to your prayers, and I'm like, what? He says a lot in like one sentence, and I'm like, when you unpack it, at first it can feel a bit like, oof, like what does that mean? But then as you slowly like process it, it's really interesting because the Bible talks a lot about the man being the head, and then the woman being, you know, underneath him, and then it talks about the woman submitting a lot. And I think that's a hard pill to swallow for a lot of women. But it's interesting because I want to actually touch on that quickly. These terms like weaker and submission, and being told to submit, why do you guys think that people are so triggered by that? Like, because if I could say for myself, and I'll go into why I was triggered, but why do you think like people are so triggered by those terms?
I think because it kind of shows that women need a man, they need someone else, like that they can't be on their own, or without a man that they're not up to par, or they can't be up to par. And a lot of women are doing things on their own without a guy, and so that can kind of diminish or belittle their efforts or what they know they're doing as well. It's the idea of, I guess sometimes people see submission as obedience, and especially obeying the wrong person. They're seeing it as that, maybe like dictatorship rather than an actual partnership, like Shalom said. So if you see it from that way, it's very triggering, I guess.
What about you, Shalom?
I think it's a lot. I think for me, the top two are like submission kind of equals weakness. You know, meaning obviously if you're to submit, it means you can't fight or you can't win, so you give up. So I think people hear submission and that's exactly what they think of. And I understand, like, I'll be honest, that's triggering. I can imagine if it was flipped the other way, I'll be like, what? Submit to, like, I get it. But again, I guess maybe we can go into that, but I think it's not the case. I don't think that should be the case. And also, if you are going to stick to, you need to submit, then I think it's understanding that's, it's not a matter of weakness. It's kind of something you do willingly, because you have to submit, you know, willingly. You have to go forward and do that. And I feel like if you are quote unquote submitting to the right person, someone who loves you and is going to take care of you, it's not a problem. I think the issue is, you know, women are just like, just submit to this guy who doesn't actually know, he doesn't even rate me, doesn't treat me well. Like, I'm just going to go around submitting. And I get it. Again, like I said, it can be annoying, but you know, you find people that are genuinely like in love. It's not really that big of an issue.
I think one thing, and I really want to make this clear. Oh my gosh, it's right everywhere. I really want to make this clear on this episode. Is that when the Bible, whenever it's telling a woman to submit, it is to their husband. Not to your little situationship guy, not to your friends with benefits guy, not to the boyfriend that's been dragging you along for 10 years. It's to your husband, like the one that has got down on one knee, proposed, married you. Like, not, did you get what I mean? And I think if you are in a situation that is clearly not got no longevity of like, or the person, like you said, isn't treating you well, isn't respecting you, then yes, submission feels like that is the last thing I'm gonna do. So I can imagine, for me personally, when I read that verse, and when it's talking about the weaker vessel, I'm reading all these things in the Bible, and I remember because I got saved at 20, and so by that point I already kind of formed my understanding. I didn't grow up in church, so the Bible was very new to me. For a lot of people it's kind of like, oh yeah, we understand how it works, but I was reading this like, what is this archaic nonsense that I'm reading? But I remember like reading it, and first I was triggered by it, like I said, but then and even sometimes when I reread the verses like I did last year, it's a bit like, oh, but then I also find it like almost freeing, because it's so countercultural in the best way, if that makes sense, in the sense that like you said, it gives like this formula almost, and it's not promised that it's going to equal something perfect,
100%,
but it almost gives you this way in which life is supposed to be lived. And that for me is like almost like a freedom, because it's like sometimes figuring it out just feels like a lot of work and a lot of dead ends, if that makes sense. And it's like God has graced us with this kind of like this way of living, which is kind of how he's created us. And then it's weird because once you have that perspective, you start to see what natural characteristics women have and men have that fit into this idea. And it's almost like, wow, like God actually made us to do this, if that makes sense. And I just want to make it clear, in that particular verse, just for context, I did read some commentaries and do a bit of research. When it's referring to women as the weaker vessel, it's actually mostly speaking about physically, as opposed to like in anything else. So don't think like women are just weak or anything like that. That's not what the Bible's talking about. And obviously we know biologically, for the most part, women are naturally physically weaker than men, or men are stronger, I would like to say. Not that women are weak, but men are stronger. But then it's funny because we say that, and then like God's the one that gave us the ability to have children, which is not something that a weak vessel can do, if that makes sense. So it's interesting because that verse is mainly talking about physical strength. But from there, I just kind of wanted to kind of go on to this idea of like you kind of touched on it, Shalom, in terms of like willingness to submit, because it can feel like I said, if you're submitting to the wrong person, it's gonna feel like a mountain to do, you know, like they say, like molehill versus a mountain. Like submitting to the wrong person just feels like a nightmare. But then how do you know when it's like this maybe might be more for you, Jemima, like, well, actually I'll ask you this question. For you, was it easy to kind of figure that out in marriage, or was that like a hard thing to do? Was it a hard concept to kind of get your head around, or was it kind of like
no, I'll be honest, no, it wasn't. I think it's because I've heard it so many times, like in university, every year, like I went to a certain youth fellowship, I would say every year, even every 6 months, I'll talk about relationships and submission. And so I'd already kind of got in my head around it. I guess what that would look like in marriage would be different depending on who I'm married to. But I guess when we were dating, I knew Shalom, like I knew what submission would look like to Shalom. So yeah, it wasn't difficult.
Was it harder in marriage than you thought it would be?
No, I wouldn't say so. Why are you looking at me like that?
No, it's just
No, I honestly, I think me and Shalom were we were both very intentional, had a lot of discussions when we were dating. And when we were dating, it was like we were preparing for marriage anyway. So that submission kind of started. I respect Shalom a lot and really listen to his opinion. And at the same time, that doesn't mean that I can't chip in my own 2 pence. And like I can disagree. We disagree. We have discussions. Yeah. We take it back in prayer and we'll come together. Do you know what I mean? But I wouldn't say it was harder, or maybe I just haven't encountered the hard part yet. Don't know. But honestly, it wasn't hard in marriage.
Interesting. So one thing you touched on there, which I think is really interesting, is in the Bible, you said the word respect, which is a key component here, because when we talk about submission, because obviously we are kind of talking about it, and I realised that we don't really give a definition, and now I'm not going to like drag up a definition of of submission because there's not one directly in the Bible, and then I don't want to just get one off of Google because then it talks about completely different things. But submission is almost like willingly surrendering yourself to something or to someone. And I honestly believe submission in marriage is just a extension of your submission to God. When you've submitted to God, it's like you've already practiced this element of surrender, and giving yourself over, and willingly letting things be in his hands. And I think when you get, I mean, I am not married once again, but when you get married, it's almost like an extension of that, because then God has led this man, it's brought this man to lead you, and he's asking you once again to then surrender yourself or to submit yourself to him. So it's that. And submission does not mean obedient, it does not mean not having an opinion, it does not mean weakness, it does not mean like no ability to have a say or do anything. It doesn't mean that you have to sit at home just cook and clean. It looks different for most people. I don't think that any two marriages look the same, and submission definitely does not look the same in any two marriages. But I think the key is more, like you said, respect and almost trust. Yeah, because you know, it's interesting in the Bible. It tells husbands to love their wives, but it tells the wives to respect their husband. Yeah. And I've never really noticed that until, like I said, I was rereading the Bible recently, and I was like, hold on, like that's weird because it's not symmetrical. It's not the same, you know, like why is it that husbands have to love and wives have to respect? What do you guys think about that? Like, what do you think? Why do you think there is that difference, and what do you think that difference means?
I definitely think men crave respect more and almost see that as a sign of love.
Yeah.
And then for women to really respect, or respecting is a way they show their love as well. And it's easy to definitely respect someone who's loving you. I think women need to be loved and men need to be respected. That's my opinion. What do you think?
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think respect is very key. Really, really key. And just like you said with, the trust aspect as well, that's something that as a guy you have to really take note of, and something you have to earn. I don't expect you to just come and just trust me, and just listen to whatever it is I'm saying. I have to earn that. I have to show you that I'm able to have certain discussions with you, make certain decisions, prepare, be smart, plan ahead, things like that. And I guess in terms of the love and respect, you know that women do love to be loved, in every way. Some loudly, some maybe not so loudly, but it's nice. But I think, like you said, for guys, respect is really, really key. Really, really key. And we take that from everyone we like growing up. So I can imagine the gravity of your wife as well. If she's able to kind of respect you, it goes a really long way.
Yeah, I 100% agree with everything you've both just said. I just wanted to kind of then talk about like what leadership means, because it's all well and good to say, okay, submission, like you said, being the quote unquote weaker vessel, whatever that means. But then like leadership, because in that same verse, it talks about dwell with them in understanding. What does like leadership mean to both of you guys, and headship of the home, and how does that practically work? Because a good question that you could ask is, why can't both people be equal? Because a lot of people think that's how it should be. Like, why can't both people be on the same level? Why can't they both have the same authority and power? Why does one have to submit to the other?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I feel like with leadership, I think there's a responsibility there. I think whenever people hear leadership, again, it's like this dictator, this president is going to tell people what to do. But that's not what it is. Like, there's a responsibility there. For me personally, like, I need to think about making sure that she's okay. Making sure that she's good, in kind of every aspect, really. Supporting her to achieve her goals, the list goes on. Just being behind for her, like, at all times. And to me, that's what I would say is one of my forms of leadership, quote unquote. I'm not here to kind of say, let's take all our money and invest in Bitcoin. Like, I feel like this is the next thing. Do you know what I mean? I'm just gonna have my way, but it's about being there and supporting her. I think obviously, like you said, in biblical times, like, women didn't have much of a say in a lot of things. They didn't have access to a lot of things either. So it was down to the man to actually lead. And things have evolved, but I guess it's still somewhat a man's world. It's not great, but that's just kind of how it is. So I guess you'd be expected to be aware of that and use that again to support your wife, build your marriage, just be a bit more responsible in decisions that you make and things like that. The list goes on, really. But that's what it is to me. When someone says, head of your home, you just need to make sure that everyone's good. You need to make sure your wife is okay. You need to make sure she's fine. You need to make sure she's loved. You need to make sure she's supported. Obviously, when you have kids as well, you know, you want to make sure that you know the kids are great. Like I said, she's going to carry kids for 9 months, and you know, I don't expect her to have a child and then come back and still be trying to go to work or trying to do this. Like, you need to make sure that you take care of everyone in the home, really. Like I said, things have changed, and you know, I can imagine like a woman that's earning, you know, tons of money and just feels in charge, you know, wanting to kind of lead the home. And again, that's fine. You know, if Jemima tomorrow, you know, wins the lottery or gets a job that pays her millions, yeah, I'll be at home. I'm serious, yeah, I'll be at home. And, you know, you come back, dinner's ready, all of that.
Yeah.
Like, I got you, you know, because you're doing your thing. But again, that's where the respect comes in, because a lot of the time, for some people, your husband or the person you're with, the guy isn't making as much money as you, and then respect goes out the window, which is a major problem. And then that's because they've tied the respect to the same traditional things that they don't want to abide by. So, you know, I just thought...
Not Shalom dropping
I just
again.
thought that, but yeah, no, but literally, like I said, I understand, you know, it's not, all this stuff isn't set in stone, you know. Time has gone on, you know, people have advanced, but I feel like the principles still remain regardless, you know, so it's not, don't throw away the verse, definitely not, but understand the principles behind it,
I like that. And I think that's so true, because we see this whole it's interesting because also with all blue therapy and all this stuff that went down and Paul the Provider and then Deborah and all of these characters, it's interesting because, like you say, people really want a mixture, it seems, of traditional and modern. And it's like, what exactly do you want? Like, do you get what I mean? What is it that you actually want? Because it's like, you know, you want a guy to be a provider, but at the same time, you know, and it's interesting because it's like, I know for some women, like when I was talking about like, you know, when I first got saved, I remember talking to my friend and I remember saying like, yeah, I really want a biblical marriage. And then she was like, so are you going to say the vow? And I was like, what vow? She's like, the vow, like, you know, the one about where you're going to submit to your husband. And I was like, yeah, but it was interesting because I'd never really thought about it as like a thing, if that makes sense. And then on top of that, I was kind of like, what, you know, I said to her, like, you know what, you know, me and her continued this conversation years ago, and then she was like, well, you know, women have done so much to become independent, and I didn't realize that so many people tie that independence to like the things that basically being free of men. So being then told you need to go back under a man feels a bit like we're going in reverse here, guys. Like, you know, I read somewhere that only in 1974 was it something like that, a woman could have her own bank account. Maybe that's not right. Maybe it's earlier than that. But like it feels like it would be earlier than that. Yeah, but it wasn't that long ago. And it's actually like, wait, what? Like before that, even if you wanted to be independent as a woman, you couldn't, because money controls everything. You can't buy a house. You couldn't. Do you know what I mean? So it was kind of like, oh, like we've come so far, like you said, in terms of, you know, we want all of this independence, but then there's like, you know, then once again, like you say, the respect goes out the window when you're like, but this guy isn't doing X, Y, and Z. And this kind of mash up a new and old clearly isn't working, as we can see from Blue Therapy, because it's like you have even, you know, on paper, really and truly, Paul and Shoma should have worked in the sense that like Paul's a provider and she wants to cook for her man, she wants to do, but then it's like there's this clash because it's like, is that what you really want though? Do you get what I mean? Is that what you really want? I think it's even one point where Jamal was like, or the Jamal guy was kind of like, yeah, to make money I have to go on social media. It's like this idea of this modern day providing. It's like, it's so it's very different. The whole thing looks extremely different. The idea of providing and protection. Because really and truly, we're not going to be getting mauled down by bears anymore. Yeah. Like, so what is this protection? And is it still relevant?
That's the thing. Like I said, I feel like the truth is there are some women that out-earn men. You know, that's the truth. And again, some of those women might say, well, you know, do I really need a man earning more, maybe even double? And again, that's fine. But what I would ask, like, again, is the expectation for the man just to provide financial support?
Yeah.
Is that really where it ends? You know, again, if you find someone that you truly love and can be with, like, they will help you out in other ways other than financial support. That's the truth. Some people need emotional support. Some people need someone to be there for them. You know, some people need someone to support them, you know, achieve their dreams. Like, the list goes on and on. But I feel like we're so tied to the finance aspects because, again, that's the traditional way of thinking. And I understand it. But at the same time, I don't think it stops there. I think we need to kind of think wider. But like you said, that mashup of old and new is very, very tricky.
Yeah.
And, you know, sometimes it's just like, just leave people to do what they want to do. I guess people want different stuff.
Yeah.
So what would you say, from your perspective, like protecting is in this modern day or in relationship, would you say?
I mean, I guess for us, I would say like, being there to support you, right? Because I know, you know, stuff can get difficult. You know, you get a bit anxious. You're under pressure of certain things, but just someone to fall back on. You know, I'm there. I'm there to remind you as well. I feel like a lot of people don't have some people close to them to remind them, like, you know what, you're actually really, you know, you're great at this. You know, you can do this. Don't forget how skilled you are. Don't forget how beautiful you are. The list goes on and on. I like, obviously the physical protection. You know, I need to help you get stuff from the fridge because she's a bit short.
Not protection.
She's a bit short. She's a bit short. Can't reach the top layer, so I have to get the plates and stuff.
That is not protection.
It's not, but it counts. All of that counts.
Protection.
But like, you know, I can't. It would be hard for me to even say, this is what to expect from me. But because I love you, I give you what I can. You know, that's all I can do. And it's up to you to decide. Well, actually, you know, maybe that's not enough, or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
But it is, when you love someone, like, you don't think about what you can get from them, think about what you can give them, how you can support them, how you can be there for them. So like you said, the protection, like, you know, the bears aren't outside. You know, you take the bus, you drive a car to wherever you need to go, so you're fine. But I think it comes in so many different layers. Like I said, the emotional support that you get there, you know, the physical support, the list goes on.
I think it's so true. And I actually recently was speaking to a friend of mine who is married as well, and she was basically saying like, she should never admit this to him, but one of the forms of protection her husband gives her is like basically just like wisdom. Because she's like, sometimes I won't be thinking clearly because I'm an emotional person, not because women are emotional, I don't want to do that thing, sure. But like, she's an emotional person, she'll be functioning in her emotional state, and then he will just provide wisdom. And she's like, the amount of situations that's protected me from that I could have been in, I think, oh my gosh, like that is the protection that he's provided. Because sometimes, like you say, you're like, this job, I'm not doing it. Like, I'm out. Like, no. And you know, a word of wisdom can really, you know, change your perspective. Definitely. I just kind of wanted to also talk about this, like, so for you guys, what, like, you know, 2021, we're in modern day, we see relationships being done, we see blue therapy, we see all of these crazy things. How is it for you guys being in this kind of more traditional, like, style marriage when you're young? Do people have opinions? Are they strong opinions? Is it like, do your parents think, oh, you're too young for this? Or do you know what I mean? Or is everyone quite supportive? Do you feel like at times, like Shalom, like, oh, I just want to be chilling, I don't want to need to protect nobody? And Jemima, do you feel like I just want to take this on? And do you know what I mean? How is that for you guys, being in 2021 where we see so many modern relationships and still trying to honor a biblical idea of marriage?
Yeah, I think, to be fair, most of my friends are Christians. I guess they have the same kind of mindset. I think that older generations see things very, very differently. Even submission, because I remember I was speaking to someone in my family, and we're talking about hair and the type of hairstyle Shalom liked me to have. And that person was like, yeah, that's what you should be doing from henceforth. That's the only hairstyle if Shalom. She was like, that's what submission is. I was thinking, what kind of thing is that? I was like, that
you can never have your own hair.
Because Shalom likes this one hairstyle, that's what I have to do. I was like, nah, I don't understand. Never happened. But that's, like, we're Christians, but I guess they see submission as completely different. So that was, I guess, very different. I think we saw that as well in the wedding planning. In it all. But generally, I think people have been quite supportive, or have a similar mindset in terms of our friends navigating traditional values in a modern day society. So it's been okay. I think it's just the older generation, I don't know, their views are
very strong,
very strong, very I don't agree with
that's
that.
The only hairstyle you should ever have. I can't believe you're changing your hair.
I can't remember that.
And like cooking as well, you know
what
the
I like,
vibes.
you should be cooking all
Yeah,
the time.
that's it. I should serve it to you every day and
do
stuff
you know
like
what
that.
I think it's easier to navigate when I don't really share it a lot, like how our marriage is, you know, it's just between like me and her, like we kind of decide what works for us. So it's easy to navigate, but at the same time, I know that people won't understand certain things we do, and that's always going to be the case. You know, I feel like, especially like I said, if you're going to go the old school quote unquote Christian way, whatever, it's just always going to be the case. So sometimes I tell people like this is how we roll and this is what works for us. Other times I don't, because I know it's going to lead to certain conversations. But it's not proved difficult, especially when you're not giving people so much insight into it. It'd be different if I got, I was always shouting, this is how it should be done, this is what we do, and getting all sorts of feedback and back and forth, like you said. But we can't just work on it ourselves, keep it to ourselves, know what works for us. So it's fine. Obviously, we see what other people are doing, like you said. People have modern ways of running things, and yeah, I guess we leave people to do what they want to do and kind of focus on us. But if someone wants to kind of, challenge to a certain degree, would explain that, this is why we're doing what we're doing, and trust me, works for us. It's not as bad as you think it is, or what's been painted out to you by the older generation, like you said.
Yeah, because I think like I agree with what you say, and I think that sometimes some people are just naturally more skilled in other things. Like, for example, one of my friends, she's married and they're in a Christian marriage and they believe in everything that we've just spoken about. But like, she handles the finances and she does that because she's just better with money. Like, she just understands it better. And he's never felt like she's doing something like she shouldn't be doing, or I need to take this on. He's just like, you know it better than I do. And it's about honoring each other's. And that's one thing I love about the Bible, and I think this is the point I was going to make. Honor is really important. And it goes on about this honor word, honor, because it's like this, okay, love aside, respect aside, honor. And I was really thinking, like, what does it even mean to honor someone? And it means, even when you're not feeling it, still have a level of respect, but also functioning that decision that they've made. And it's like, also when you are feeling it and it is good, still honor that person. And it's like, honor is something that is just supposed to stay substantial. And it's like not running to go and gossip about your husband, or running to go and gossip about your wife, or do you know what I mean? It's about having this level of respect, trust, but like also like holding it to a standard, if that makes sense. And it's like, okay, you see marriage as something that is sacred, and so you protect it at all costs. And I think sometimes people, especially like in modern day relationships, it's they're in it, like you said earlier, to protect themselves, but not really to protect the relationship itself, if that makes sense. And it's like all of these attacks, like even social media, if you think about it, how much of a massive role that plays in people's relationships.
So massive.
It's just even too much. I think it's gotten to the point where it's too much. It determines way too much.
Modern day relationships, I'm really trying to understand what it is that people want, because it's like, I personally don't think it's clear. But then on top of that, obviously I know that everyone wants their own things. I feel like what kind of society will that cultivate off the back of it, if that makes sense? Like, everyone's out here just trying to get their needs met. And that's actually contrary to what a relationship should be. It's all about sacrificing. Really, you're going in it to serve. And that's what the Bible talks about, and that's what my understanding of what a relationship is. It's all about service. But in today we're seeing the opposite. It's all about being served. And if it's not serving you, let it go. I
definitely agree with that, especially because it brings the need for like validation as well, other people to validate you, or like social media just gives you access to so many people's views and opinions, like you said, and like people are craving that and desiring that, and putting their relationships out there for validation or for things. And if people give opinions that are contrary to what they believe, like it can be very negative, especially if people are seeking that validation.
Like I said before, I just think there's some things you shouldn't share. I feel like inner workings of a marriage, probably try not to share that one, because like I said, everyone has an opinion. Everyone thinks they have the magic formula, everyone thinks they've done it perfectly, and you don't want to be dealing with that. So I think social media is definitely one to kind of be careful on, and especially it kind of can alter your confidence and your thinking, because if you say this is how we're doing a marriage and someone says, oh, but what about X, or if you do Y, are you sure she's not doing this, or you say she doesn't like to do that, that's not really a good sign. And all of a sudden you're thinking, oh wow, is this a good sign? Is she doing this? Is he doing that? You'd never want to be in that headspace. So definitely want to be really mindful of. So
I mean, obviously you guys don't think this, but why don't you think that this whole idea of marriage that we see in the Bible is outdated? A lot of people do think it's outdated. Why do you guys think it's still relevant to your marriage today in 2021?
For me, like I said, I think the principles remain. I think with a lot of stuff in the Bible, it was to certain people at a certain time, but the world has moved on and evolved. But again, it doesn't mean you throw away the verses. Like, the principle still stands. You are supposed to not supposed to, like, you're supposed to love your wife. That stands. That's not gone anywhere. You're supposed to take care of her. You're supposed to be there for her. And wives are supposed to love her husband and respect him. I feel like those principles haven't gone anywhere. And when, like I said, when you get into the things of submission, like you explained earlier, there's definitions for these things. There's reasoning behind them, and also there's that scope for you to decide what works in your marriage. I think that's what a lot of people don't understand. That these things that you're reading, again, they're the principles that guide you. Principles are there to guide you, so you follow them, and then you decide what works best for you. But I can imagine, like you said, the kickback to authority. People don't even want to hear all of that. They just want to do their own thing. They just want to go with whatever works for them, whatever keeps them happy. And that kind of leads to some of the stuff you see today. So for me personally, I've taken the principles, I've taken the stuff that I've read, I've taken the stuff that I've seen. Even more so, it's more what I've physically seen. My parents, I really love them, and I love the partnership that they have. I love their marriage, and that's played a huge part in the kind of husband and father I want to be today. You know, so yes, the Bible's there, and that's one aspect. But I think also what you take from kind of your role models and people around you is also really important as well. So if my role models have done it a certain way, and I can see that it works for them, there's a partnership there, there's discussion, you know, there's principles guiding it, then I want to emulate that as well.
What about you?
I can't remember the question.
Like, why do you still feel like the Bible? So why do you feel like it's not outdated to have a biblical marriage in 2021? Why have you decided that this is still the way you want to do things, even though it could be so easy to say this is just old, this is for back in the day, it's not relevant now?
Yeah, I think the core principles are still, even though people say they don't want them in a marriage, you kind of still do. Respect, love is still there. Like the protector, the housemaker, that, like, to be honest, they're all roles that take place in a marriage now as well. And I think the principle of marriage is beautiful, especially biblical marriage, and I just can't see a way that our marriage wouldn't work with that. I don't even know what modern day marriage principles are. I really don't understand. Like you said, it sounds selfish, self-conceited. I don't know, but this is very loving, giving, honouring, respecting, trusting. And I think those are principles that we should all try to have in a marriage. And so it makes sense, genuinely. I think it just makes so much sense. Can't imagine it any other way.
Yeah, I think that's so true. And I just like to kind of conclude and wrap up. I just think it's really interesting because we see older people stay together, and we hear their marriages are like, oh, you've been together like 70 years. Like my next door neighbour, her partner just passed away, actually, unfortunately, and they've been together, they hit their 50-year wedding anniversary like a couple of months. I think 50 years, like 50 years is a long time to be with someone. And to be, and you know, she's heartbroken, she loves him obviously, and it's just like it's interesting because then you hear relationships now, and you know, people are getting divorced frequently. And I was actually listening to something now, and it was like, you can't say like oh, let's do it how they did it in the old days, because once again, women didn't have the freedom to leave them if they wanted to do. They didn't have the tools to go out and just do whatever they wanted to. So, you know, and I don't think it's healthy to always say, oh, these relationships don't last these days, because no, I don't think that's healthy to say we should do it how they did it back then, because once again, you'll be having your hair the same way until you're 88, like if you do stuff like that. But at the same time, I do think, like you said, the principles are the same. Maybe how you navigate those principles might look different, but the core beliefs of there being that respect, that love, that ability to lean on one another, and one person being able to lead the other, and the other person being able to be a wise voice, and being able to provide good counsel and, you know, support to that person that goes out there, and you know, provides and protects. I think that is important, but how you navigate that and how that looks might be different. You know, it doesn't have to be the same as just go home and, you know, this guy's going and chopping wood in the forest and she's staying at home with the babies. Like, that's not what it needs to look like necessarily, but the core principles are the same. And I think we work so much on wanting the same output, but we're not willing to do what it takes to get that output. You know, if you really want a marriage that is respectful, loving, it's going to take sacrifice, it's going to take listening, it's going to take sometimes being wrong, and sometimes being the first to say sorry. It's not always going to be like, oh yeah, I am my own person, he's his own person. Because I think that in reality is just a business deal. It's so transactional. And I think, you know,
and I think that is what modern day is.
It is. It's transactional relationships, and marriage biblically it's the opposite of that. It's like giving everything you have for free. Like, it's like giving everything you can give into something, not knowing what you're going to get back out, you know, because it's not promised. And it's almost, like I said, what it's supposed to be is reflective of Christ's love for us, you know, and what he did for us, and that, you know, how he loves the church. And I think when you think of it that way, you know, how much God is willing to do for us, but then how much we in turn should be willing to do for God because of how much he's already done for us. It's like, when you use that as a template, it makes sense. Do you get what I mean? And like I said, all of this submission, leadership, it's like, it only works if it's to the right person. And that doesn't mean that there's only one person for you. I'm very anti that view that you have a soulmate per se. But I do believe that there are the wrong people for you. And if there's no level of, like you said, and the thing that you said earlier on today about you felt at peace, people don't understand how important peace, like, and I'm not talking about like, oh yeah, I just feel a level of peace, like nothing's gonna ever go wrong, but there's this level of like, you don't feel an inner confliction. Do you get what I mean? And I think that is really key. And if you felt like, oh, I could never see myself like being like led by this person, you know, as a woman, or if you're a guy and you feel like, oh no, she's too hard-headed, I could never, you know, then sir, ma'am, I don't know if this is gonna work out, like, you know. But I think there's a level of peace that should come with it if it is the right person. And also, if you're someone that wants that, and you're with someone that doesn't want that, don't expect it to just figure itself out. I feel like so many people want different things in a relationship, but because of, like we said earlier, feelings, stay in it thinking it will just figure itself out. If you want him to be a provider or him to be this and he wants to be something completely different, it's not just going to figure itself out. You need to consciously discuss it and do actions to make it, happen, and sometimes it's worth just being single if it's not that, it's not by force. But yeah, that's what I kind of wanted to say. Kind of wanted to wrap up. It was a really good conversation. I've loved having you guys on. I feel like you've provided such wisdom. It's really, I think, refreshing to see people able to have these relationships that are, built on biblical foundations in 2021. Because, like I said, you see so much stuff on social media and you think that is the norm, and you think that is what everyone is doing. Almost, it kind of feels like that's the popular thing, if that makes sense. When in reality, you don't actually know what's going on in people's homes. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's what's being portrayed, but you don't know the reality. So it's so, like, refreshing. And one of the main reasons why I wanted to do it was to see something so counter-cultural in, like, today's culture, which is just a couple that have made a stand for God, that are devoted to doing things God's way, and clearly it's working, and I'm really excited just to see what God's going to do with you guys in life. I feel like God's going to be able to bless you guys, and I think it's just it's been so encouraging to unpack the truth almost, because it's just so much lies, if that makes sense, when it comes to, like, relationships, like he has to do this or she has to be that, and it's so refreshing to just unpack the truth and say it how it is. But yeah, guys, thank you so much for coming on. It's been amazing having you guys on.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
So guys, we're gonna wrap up today's episode. If you can, please give us a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. It really makes a difference, guys. Even if you're watching it on YouTube, go to Apple Podcasts and leave a review, because that's how more people see the podcast. Oh my gosh, sorry. That's how more people see the podcast. So please give it a 5-star review and say what you like about the podcast and share it with someone, because that's how we're gonna get the ball rolling. So thank you guys once again for coming on. Where can we find you?
I always forget my handles, I can't lie. What's my Instagram? Is it BAYE_M?
Yeah,
I think that's my Instagram. Yeah.
And Twitter.
So I can't remember what's the handle.
Okay, well, I'll put everything down below.
So I always change
it. I'll put something. Oh my gosh, you on Twitter is like, you're one of my favorite people to follow on Twitter. But I just feel like you're so entertaining. Oh my gosh, it's hilarious.
See that?
Everyone says that about
Come
you.
on,
Literally one of the most entertaining people on Twitter. It's like you have an alter ego, like Shalom 2.0. But it's been a pleasure having you guys on. So thank you once again, and bye guys.
Bye.